Welcome again, welcome to MAAT, from where we are broadcasting the second talk in a series of opening events that we have organized for this first week since yesterday, since the reopening of the museum. I am Beatrice Leanza, I am the director of MAAT, and today I'm here with Claudia Martinho. Ciao Claudia. So we have organized this conversation today to talk a little bit more about this piece.
Are the result of the work of thousands of people. So, so the Macaulay Library, for instance, is the biggest wildlife archive that there is now online. It compiles a huge amount of collaborations, and it started a very long time ago. And so the first recording of an extinct bird was made in 1953, which is a very old recording.
Yeah.
And so in order to know first which birds are extinct, there was also a work of research looking into the red list of threatened species, which is a very complete resource made by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And from that point, I could see that there are thousands of species which are extinct, but then looking one by one on the other archive and trying to find the recordings, audio recordings, I couldn't find that many, only about 7. Okay. And so this was also the reason why the piece is based not only in extinct species, but also in critically endangered, which is a very important aspect as well, because they're still here, and it's still time. We're still on time to listen and to change our behaviors. So there are things that definitely we can do because we are the cause of this extinction. But
so we have actually also produced a map that you can in fact find here at the museum. You can take it up for free when you arrive, and we have like one station which is just below us in the space in the bird station, like under here, where we have created this map where you can find description basically of these birds, literally their looks, but also like the onomatopoeic rendition of their sounds, as well as the reason for their demise. But so, like, how did you sort of like then went to, because it has to be explained that the piece is sort of, it's a soundscape, so it's spatialized all around the museum, so both, let's say, in the central area as well as in the others. So how is this created? Because I know that this is not a fixed loop, like of sound. So how did you actually design the soundscape?
The sounds are basically calls and songs and alert signals.
It would be nice to know what's the difference between songs and calls.
Well, songs are longer, calls are shorter and louder, and songs are like love songs. So it's like it's a language, and of course it's a language, but it's the calls are quite insistent and very loud. Then it depends, of course, of the species. It's totally different between species. And in the same species, you can find, like in humans, dialects. So you can find differences. So this, from all these sounds, then the work was to work on the sounds in a very entering the language of birds, listening not with an ear like an ear of music or like a human ear, but trying to get into their language and to also, this is one important aspect, this is a spatial installation, so it is birds, the sounds of birds come from heights, so all these samples of sounds I have compiled and work on them. It's a very long and deep, intense work of going through the sounds, and then just following the melodies and the intention also to have spaces where it would be louder and spaces where it would be quieter. So it is like a dialogue between the creation of this spatialization of these soundscapes and the intervention of soil and the MAAT architecture, which is a very particular acoustics.
Right.
And not an easy one, but it's easy at the end. Yeah.
Full of echoes too.
Full of
like
echoes.
We've tried many times. You can hear from all directions.
Like a jungle.
But I was like, when we were talking the other day, actually, you said something very interesting that I think I'd love to talk a little bit about now, because the whole point of this installation, like that we developed with Florian and Jean of Soil, was really an attempt at creating a different sort of, in its own way, like sensorial environment at the level of how people really are in a museum, right? So trying almost to sort of like capsize or to change a little bit, like our physical relationship with the hierarchies, implicit, like in spaces, institutional spaces. And the idea also, therefore, that with this we would have kind of like pushed, made a proposition to the audience and pushed them to likewise react to this. And so, we were talking about this idea of sonic activism. But so what is sonic activism?
It can be many things, but activism for me, it's the opposite of passivism. For instance, we're active, we're passive. So from a point of a very direct point is that if we're talking about our senses, our culture is totally visual based, and even more, it's like a very short spectral frequency spectrum, and we're very constrained by the way that the environment is built and by our rhythms in the everyday life. So it is definitely very important to be more attentive to all the other senses, and this intervention by soil does that. It invites to an exploration where the movement with the lack of vision, and it really opens other ways of experiencing the MAAT space. So in terms of sound, this idea of acoustic sensibilization is essential to work in space, because it's a very neglected dimension of the experience. And when when it's basically the Occidental culture doesn't have any sound education, let's say. It's very limited. So our everyday life is quite constrained by so much noise. We're exposed to so much homogeneous experiences of space that at the end our spectrum is totally flattened. So then this kind of opportunities are good to invite people to enter into another way of, into active listening, into a way that you are actually activating the full spectrum. And these sounds that you could hear when there was the confinement and there were no cars on the streets, no planes, no nothing. You could clearly hear the echoes on the city.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of thing that people were marveled. Wow, there are more birds. No, there are not more birds.
They've always been there.
Yes. So basically this is a sort of amplification of what is there, what exists, and what we should naturally be more attuned to, our primary sensory environment.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I will, let's go back to this, but I wanted to ask you actually something because, well, you have quite, you know, like the perfect combination of backgrounds, you know, when it comes to what we were trying to do here, because you have a degree in architecture, you have a Master of Science and Technology in Architectural Acoustics, and then you also have a PhD in Music and Sound Art. So, you know, it's... Let's, you know, like go back to this, you know, like for a moment and tell us a little bit like what you have been, you know, like doing with these tools and you know, like, and how then we can go back a little bit, you know, to this idea of sort of like acoustic ecology, you know, like, and how we can transfer that into more of the educational environment.
Yes. Most of the time it's only object-based, and we're taught in a very disconnected way between the experience of the body, the physical experience, the sensorial experience, and what we design. And there is a serious issue going on in education, or the lack of education, the lack of an integral education. And, well, it doesn't matter, the cause is industrialization and the separation of disciplines, and then we have all separated, because before architects knew about acoustics, they knew about everything related to the senses. It's something that got lost. Somehow it just got separated. So, for me particularly, I'm very sensitive before going to study to this. What is space? Space is not empty, and so all the other cultures except the Western-based, they have this respect for the in-between, or like the Japanese call the MAAT, for instance, and then so many other cultures have this ritualized way of relating to space, and we are not taught in those terms. We are taught that we do whatever we feel like, and that space is, we can go and conquer and colonize, basically, being a bit tough. But at the end, it's what happens. Even if architects have the best intentions, and they're definitely very good education in architecture and all that, but it's something that just got lost, this idea that space is alive. Space is full of connections and communication going on, and we should be sensitive to that, to the genius loci, and to what is there. So from that point, I started to look around where, if we want to create this, I also was always most interested in this kind of work like soil does, and it's what I've worked for a while, which is this kind of very fast way of testing and experimenting. It's temporary, but it's not temporary. This kind of agencies So just to create situations that change the relation between people and make some kind, because it's quite difficult to build something. And then when you go in these transversal areas, then you can test things. And so yeah, then sound for me was also always a dimension, like a portal to self-knowledge and to understand better the world. And that's why I've decided to look a bit further into what is this relation between sound and space, basically.
Okay.
And there are many people doing this. Then I discovered that I was not alone and I was not crazy. So, yeah.
But so let's go back to what we were talking about right now, you know, in terms of like the relationship between sonic activism and the ecological crisis. So clearly this, you know, what we have done together and you know, the idea of working on a piece of this kind is also because at MAAT we will in the future with our future programming tackle a lot program-wise, let's say at large what we call the environmental quest in its various, you know, in various dimensions. So for me it was really important, you know, like to try to kind of also plug in different elements, you know, in the experience of the museum, you know, what you learn, what can you be exposed to inside the museum, which is like what you say, you know, not something that we consume purely visually, right, which is somehow a little bit of a default mechanism that, you know, like museums have taken up as, you know, spaces of culture for the consumption of culture, but where the form of consumption is often, you know, one-dimensional. So tell us, in your presentation, you know, like for the project, you actually mention Hildegard Festerkamp. And the beginning of this quote says, listening will help us reconnect to the environment. So, which clearly has a connection with this, you know, like installation we have done. So just, you know, tell me a little bit more of this relationship and what is this, you know, acoustic ecology, you know, like that somehow, you know, like this piece is really talking to.
Absolutely. In the 60s, in the Simon Fraser University, Murray Schafer and his fellows, Hildegard Festerkamp was one of them, Barry Truax, they had this concern that people were not really educated properly musicians. Their work was about really paying attention and giving time to listen what is going on. And this idea of acoustic ecology basically is to sensibilize people to listen to what is happening and in a way that you can actually reconnect to the environment, but to yourself also, for your integral development as a person that belongs to a place, to a web of life, basically. And so there are many different activities that they have done. They created the World Soundscape Project, and it's really there are so many people contributing to this kind of research, and this turned into the also the acoustic forum for the forum for acoustic ecology, and there are many organizations around the world of people that are from different disciplines, and they are contributing to this same purpose of acoustic sensibilization, of intervention in education, and in different spectrums, in artists and sound artists and location recorders. So all these people and have the same concern, and I think it's something that grew exponentially in the last 10 years. It's absolutely amazing, the huge amount of people that are now mapping places, producing collaborative work, participatory tools, so that anyone with a phone can record, and then you engage. So the point is, you engage, and by yourself you understand.
Yeah.
that you are the cause. So, as a human being.
Yeah, because it's also, well, I mean, you do many things. I have to say, I found out that you're very active in the sense, like you have your own practice, like so you do your own work, but you also are a researcher. You're right, like
Yes.
at university. And so I'll ask you a couple of things, and then I think I'll pick up some of the questions that are coming up, like from listener and viewers, and maybe some of the people that are sitting with us today. You don't see them, but they are here. We'll have some questions. So why don't you explain us, because especially in the artistic field, we're very familiar with the word site-specific, site specificity, right? Which has, of course, come engaged well with a lot of what is happening here, which is rethinking institutional spaces, and institutional critique and etc. But you speak of site relationality.
Yes.
So what is it?
It's the relation with the place. So basically, it's about all the way that I personally work, and many people do, is that in order to intervene somewhere, you really need to live there to experience the place. So you need to get into some sort of relation. And it's all in the relation, the way that you can actually make interventions that have sense, to have a sense of place, and to have this coherence and this connection that you can create between people and their environment. So, site-specific, or site relation. It's basically it's the same way, but specific. I mean, the relation for me is something that is dynamic. So it changes. So it's not something that is stable in time. So you really have to be a bit more modulate the ambience and in your interventions. So that's why this kind of interventions are very reappropriable by people, and it's stimulating because you can do whatever you want. So this you can sit, you can like, and do, so this is the kind of relation. So you really take people to invite people to engage with a place, basically. So that you become the co-creator of your everyday places. I mean, this is what I think about site relationality.
And how does this translate, or like how does this live in the dimension of what you do in with your research and your teaching, like, and in that dimension?
Well. At this moment, I'm engaged in a research project called Audire, Saved Sonic-Based Memories, in the University of Minho. And the purpose of this project, there are different levels, but one is sonic literacy, because there is none. And so we really need to work on that, and to take this idea of the activities to educate people, so to develop this kind of work, and also to create archives and resources that can be used creatively and create some kind of virtual museums of sounds, but sounds that are participative, that you can really expand in many directions. So this is the kind of research that we're trying to, that I'm now starting contributing, that is happening since 2 years already. And we had this activity that happened during the confinement, that we invite people to make recordings and to send, and there was really a lot of people that engaged, and this is really
What did
good.
you get, for example?
We got a lot of
I hope not toilet sounds.
No, because people actually went to record on the windows. So on the windows, the sounds of birds, the wind, and also the echoes on the street. And that's what really is amazing. And many people said it sounds like it sounded 40 years ago, or a certain place. Or then you can hear you can really going on. And what is very curious, we had this contribution which was very obvious, of one sound recorded during the confinement and the same place after. And it's like in one you hear all this diversity of many different things happening. So you can really clearly have a feeling of what's going on. And on the other recording of the same place at the same time, but 3 weeks later, you can only hear a huge amount of noise and nothing else. So it's very, very evident what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll pick up one of the questions that have come. Do you consider this piece as activist art?
That kind of question. Well, people have to say, I don't know. I don't consider it that it is anything. I mean, it's an experience, and if people, it's an experience, and each person should come and experience by himself or herself. I think it's really on your experience and the way that it may activate you at some sort of level. Then yes, it could be called like that, absolutely. Because I think this kind of works that engage people to sense themselves in a different way and to take time to really take the experience deeper. It's something that it's quite good that art can create this kind of situations. It's good that this museum has this opening to have this sort of very open and wide field of possibilities to experience.
Yeah, so I guess a connected question was, so the sound is very present throughout the space. It makes you hear. So the question is, you want to give the feeling that we are in a jungle, so in a natural environment, or you want to make people aware of the environmental consequences of our actions, so using sound of birds that we will never hear again?
It depends on the person, but yeah, definitely it depends on what you feel like. But yeah, a jungle, yes, absolutely, yes. Because in the jungle you don't really see, and this is the case with this this intervention of soils. So yeah, the sounds come from many different places. So there are about 20 speakers, and it travels everywhere. So you don't really know where it comes from, but you have to be alert because it's your only reliability that you have to hear. So it's something that wakes you up somehow.
Yeah, and hopefully not make people walk into the fabric here. But so is this connected to what we were discussing, the other day about your teaching and your research practice, and you've written, about sort of bioreconnective pedagogical tools. Mm-hmm. I'd like you to tell us a little bit more of this and about psychoacoustics.
Yeah, it's the science. The scientific name is Psychoacoustics, and there is a lot more than just quantification of the effects of sound. It's a very, very deep issue. It's this kind of reconnective tools. I mean, sound can be a tool for transformation, and the experience of sound in a measure of seconds can balance your hemispheres. Something that vision doesn't do, but it's not only balancing the hemispheres, but it's resetting all your sensorial apparatus. So, because the sound is, it gets in specific frequencies, can make your hemispheres activate in a certain way. So there is some very ancient knowledge here as well that was very well known for architecture. So that goes to Archaeoacoustics, which is a marvelous subject that was proven that particular resonance frequencies make you feel in very specific ways. So architecture had this function of creating spaces where you would be in some very defined modes of perception and of being. So these bioreconnective tools, basically, it means that sound can be a way of balancing your hemispheres, of making you attune to your biorhythms, because it regulates. We normally are not aware and of the background of our sonic experience of the everyday, but it affects absolutely everything. choose what kind of environments you want to be in as well.
And do you think in this that actually the sort of technological prowess, that we have built for ourselves, developed for ourselves, is this actually like a potentially, like a tool, sort of like an enhancement or, like a benefit to how we could tune ourselves better to what surrounds us, beside the pure sort of like really visual, like a form of consumption and communication that these tools that we have, are forces us to. So is this?
Yes, of course. They are tools, so it's the way that you use them. So the potential is about ourselves that we can decide. So the technology is like it's a tool that you can use to make you more. I mean, it really depends on the user that you give it. Yes, I mean it's something that it can. It really depends on what your purpose is. So I mean, I have nothing against nor nothing to say about. I think
you mean it's not diminishing. Let's say
no,
like our capacity
no,
to.
because it's a way of connecting. So definitely is a tool of emancipation. Definitely anyone can use it. Definitely it's accessible. Hooray, we got it. So, but then what do we do with it? So it's a delicate subject, but I mean, I really see something like the minorities are not minorities anymore. So you know, there is this ability but then education is essential because you know you just the way that the tools, this kind of digital tools are just created is to promote consuming. So then that's why it's so important to also develop these other ways of using these tools and to go into education. Absolutely.
All right. I don't know if any one of you sitting here, of course.
Hi. Hello. I'm looking forward to see the map, so I haven't explored the work yet. But because I know you run Temazcal, the Mexican sweat lodge, I wanted to know a little bit about the connection between healing practice and a sonic practice in your life, you're doing.
That's a very deep question. Yeah,
Maybe
but
it's nice to explain Temazcal for those
yes.
who don't know.
Yes, it's an ancient way of purifying with the alchemy of the four elements, which is common to every culture in the world. And it's a sauna, basically, but with a ritual that goes in the four directions and the four elements. And it's a way of attuning through voice and rhythm and music to ourselves and to really go into this ritual of the wheel of life and to reborn somehow. So yes, to heal, to regulate, to eliminate, to purify, to get your senses a little more open. So yes, my practice is very much, it's the same actually, it's the same but the tools are different. So it's just a question of the medium. It's like it's the same purpose. The purpose is the same. It's really to clean your senses, to purify the way that you are feeling, and to make you aware of yourself and get into your self-knowledge, and make you also connect to everything, to our planet, to the forces and the powers, the raw powers of nature, which are absolutely transformative. And yes.
So you think that this is actually a process? Is this a process of unlearning, in a way, or have we kind of like lost something that we should going back to, or is it as in any evolutionary process something that actually we have to learn anew because there is something. There is a new form of attunement that we have to develop for ourselves because clearly, we live on Earth, we have come to Earth, in this very specific moment in time.
Yes,
others have done things before us.
Yes.
But so is this for you is a process of unlearning things or updating our skill set?
I think it's the same purpose with the tools that you have. where you live, in the culture that you are. So it's I don't know if it's unlearning, but it's definitely transforming. So it's a transformative process, and it's a creative process. So it's something that you it's do it with the same purpose, but with the tools that you have. So we are living in this moment, and we have these tools. So yes, but the purpose has to be quite clear. Why are you doing what you're doing, and what is it for, and why are you here? I mean, how do you want to feel? You want to feel healthy? You want to? I mean, it's really very, very basic, and it's about life. So how do you enhance vitality? How do you live in balance with everyone? How do you actually just feel part of this planet and not an alien? No.
Yeah, well, exactly. Learning curve.
Yes.
We're all going
yes.
through.
I do have another question.
Here, go.
Just wondering, because I just saw the map now, but are there any species that are more specific to where we are? So, in terms of region, continent? Because choice seems to be a bit more towards a certain out there, like other.
The choice was conditioned by the sounds, the recordings that were available. So definitely there were more recordings outside of Europe, for instance, and many recordings in islands, and that explains that the islands are just places where they were ravaged somehow and in their balance. So there are lots of concentrations of extinct birds in islands. That's one aspect. So and then just that some places were not accessible because these people they are recording, they are from some places. They definitely didn't went to deep Africa, for instance. And there are not many recordings there. And
when you mean the archive, what archive?
this archive is called the Macaulay Library from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology of the Cornell University, and it compiles over 60,000 contributions of people since a very long time.
But it's based in the US.
Yes, but it's based in the US and it's open, so anyone can contribute. And it compiles many contributions around the world, and since a very, very long time. It's the biggest media archive of wildlife.
I know about it from before. I always had this impression, maybe if I can continue, it's just that a certain type of archiving usually has this ability to crystallize a certain idea of how we do see or hear the world. And in that term, how do you think that using pre-recorded material that has a certain specific date resonates with being here? So in this museum with recordings that I guess come from different places and different eras, like different decades. And what do you feel about that?
I didn't quite get your question, actually,
The
sorry.
question being, how do you feel that those recordings having been done in the 70s or 2012, well, how do you feel they mix here?
Okay, yeah.
If that's something that you
Yeah, I mean, I think the work of this archive is absolutely amazing, and I'm very thankful for the openness of allowing to have these sounds. And it's it's their purpose that people actually please do this and use them for this kind of exhibitions, pedagogical. It's what it is there for. It's why it's online. It's why it's open source, and it's a material that it's the first time that I've worked with this kind of archive, and it's a way of connecting places and times, but with the same purpose of giving a sensorial way of experience another place, and to hear these extinct minorities that no one really cares, I mean, except these people. So it's good to give them voice and space.
And if I can, I mean, it's an interesting question in a sense that if I can add to that, when Claudia was working on this piece and then she shared, like, well, of course, part of the process, and I mean, I personally didn't know of the existence, of the type of repositories, but when we were preparing this map, like with this documentation, the point was to try to, compile information that would have sort of transmitted, of course, like basic information, also to push people perhaps to be curious enough, to go and look for this. But it's true that the archive like contains a lot more, than what we have compiled there. But what I like of that is that because exactly different, there are filed different recordings in different eras. So different like recorders, actual sorts of investigators that went out there, right, so looking for. I love actually this kind of like narrative dimension, this sort of strange hidden archaeology also, that in fact in the sound embeds human presence, because these sounds were recorded by humans, right? They are not other than, like the testimonies or the, if you want a form of communication, right? Of, and honest and generous, respectful communication. And there are some, because I kind of venture then, like when you enter this world, it becomes really a total enchantment. And there are some of these sounds, some of the recordings, that clearly bear like the sounds of the recorder that is trying to really very carefully move without making sounds, probably hidden somewhere, like I am, you can open up literally this total other dimension. You enter the story of the person that was actually doing that act, maybe someone from the 70s, because many of these recordings actually date back decades ago. So I think that, well, it's not in these recordings, but I think that what we also wanted to do by creating this tool was to push people to go and like look into, where these stories come from, and it's kind of almost heartbreaking, I find, like in consideration of where we are, like today, nowadays, to almost kind of honor, like the attentiveness, like of this people that kind of like went out to,
That dedicate their lives to
create an evidence, like of a decaying nature, which is, mostly kind of human-driven. Not for all, but in many cases, yes.
And it's a passion. I mean, it's this kind of work that you can. Yes, an invitation to everyone to go to and to hear this archive, because in this was edited and very simple edited, but also a sharp part of the recordings, and then you have also the comments of the person that is, because they're studying them, obviously, and so there is this these lovely ways of reacting to what's going on, and the search, the exploration, with the parabolic, because they all record with this amazing parabolic directional way of recording, and it's yes, it's a very amazing work. That is, so it's really good to be able. It's a really great opportunity to be able to converge all this collaboration and all this work from so many people, and to share this as an experience. So, yeah.
I also know that you are kind of working on organizing projects, events within this field, within the cultural field, and that you are the co-founder of a cultural association called Rural Vivo. Tell us a little bit about this project.
Yeah, so I'm based in Jerez, which is a wildlife reservation in Portugal, and we live there. A few people live there with the same desire of creating this environmental learning, creative activities. So this association was created as a way also to to facilitate a program of residencies, artists in residencies. So actually next week there are three persons coming, and our purpose is to invite people to come and from any discipline to come and to relate to to that place. And then the work is done with the communities, being human or non-human. But then it's there is a person. Blumenkerk is going to work with the subject of the wolf, but also with the fear from the people, from what this whole story happened now. So, and then there are people from film, there are people from dance, and from music, and then we have this event, this gathering. So there's this part of wanting to bring people to these places that are absolutely isolated, and rural life is amazing. I mean, I didn't felt anything from this confinement. For me, it was the normal everyday life. It didn't change. So,
you have brought a little bit of here.
Yeah.
I see. Well, and in fact, we are gonna do some things with you in the future weeks. So, well, check our website, you know, and our events and our educational programs, because Claudia is gonna do a few, you know, is helping us to learn a little bit more, and I hope that we can continue. I mean, exploring more of this dimension is definitely something that, for me, having also in the museum, you know, I hope leads to, you know, like ways also of, you know, co-creation in a sense of like what can we from there expand, right? Learn for ourselves for the future. They are really shouting in the background. Well, if there are no other questions coming from the ground.
I was wondering how great this is to get such an exhibition, these two types of installations that kind of interact with each other. The Beeline and Claudia's work is a sound installation. And how come, what has led you to be curating or asking to curate such a work like this? And then I would like to ask Claudia about, in the context of her own work for the ecology of effect.
What?
Ecology of, sorry? Of facts.
Effects.
Sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, okay.
So, okay.
How do you feel that this, how important is your Italian communication in this context of urban environments and rural environments?
Want to answer first?
Okay, I don't because I don't know if in this recording the questions were heard, but the question for me would be like, what led me to put these two together, and for Claudia is well, this in relationship between the rural, urban, and the culture of affect in that sense. I'll briefly from my side. Well, the whole proposition was really kind of to ignite or instigate, quite simply, you know, like a transformation of what we understand spaces of this kind to be in the context even of a city. So what is it that you find in a museum? What is it that you do in a museum? What can we do, you know, perhaps better to be more related and relevant to what is going on right now? What it, you know, in contemporary times, and how, well, specifically for MAAT, for what I wish to do with MAAT, how to really sort of use, you know, our tools to help people literally navigate the present better, understand more of the present better through this, you know, knowledge areas, which are art, architecture and technology, which stay, you know, like in our name. So this was quite a, well, I would say perfectly fitting, matching. The whole process was not me commissioning exactly this. The process was me opening up the conversation with, you know, people that I have an intellectual affinity with, and then this came about. So, and this was very important, and this is the basis for, hopefully what is going to happen in the future with MAAT. I'll keep it to that.
Yeah. Yes.
To your
and
question.
With Gomes and all these people, and I mean, yes, and Jonathan Saldanha, this is all these people that connect, and then this kind of encounters happen,
Yeah.
and it's like very direct, and it's quite nice.
Yeah. Well, and if you want, this is the perfect, embodiment, of this sort of like a chanceful yet, like meaningful encounters that that can happen in life, or because we kind of use our networks better, because we try to kind of find meaning, like in common issues, in common preoccupations, and we all contribute to them, like with the same goal, with a common goal. So this beautiful intervention, that Florian and Jean design is literally, even if you look at it from, like the rest of the space, like the transparencies and this different kind of, like pathways are really an embodiment of this kind of the possibility of encounters. It's just we need to push for it, right? To make it, to consolidate. Like quite experiential at the level, right? So it's a way of reminding
And
yourself that.
It's quite remarkable also that a museum does this, to open up to encounters and to open up really, and it's good
glad.
that it's happening, and it's going to happen for sure, a lot more things. And the ecology of affect, well, it's a term. I mean, affect is the way that we feel, and it's like. Yes, this work it really stimulates your senses in a way that the birds normally makes us feel more connected to our biorhythms, and the birds signal the rise of the sun, and then there's this whole communication going on, and it's an enchantment really, and it's a way of connecting to the biorhythms also of Earth and Sun, and it's good for our well-being.
All right. Well, if there are no more questions, I think that we are going to conclude. Well, this is a conversation that could go on for like hours, definitely. But we will continue a little bit with a series of other events that are going to happen thanks to you. Thank you so much for being tuned, and for you that are here in MAAT, having ventured out. Today is not very good weather, so thank you for being here. And so stay tuned. There will be more happening. Tomorrow again we'll be live streaming with more events. So check always our socials and our website to know what's going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This was great.
Thank you. Really good.